Well, as everyone begins to take their place, we plan these services a few months in advance, most of the time. Very, very rarely do we think, oh, we should change this or switch this service around. And we were talking about what we wanted to do for 4th of July weekend. And I realized that it's been a little over 6 months since I had the opportunity to stand in front of all of you and let you just ask me questions over and over again. And it was so much fun. I wanted them to have some of the same fun with me. So anyway, we thought we'd give you an opportunity to ask us your questions for us. Questions about unity, about theology, about ourselves, whatever's in your mind. So we have a couple of people that have volunteered to run microphones for us, board members Tom McNamara and Randy Fickey. And so believe one's going to one side and one's going to the other. So I'm going to take my seat back here. We have one in the balcony. And there is one in the balcony as well, yeah. So if we didn't leave you out, balcony people, if you have a question, just let the usher up there know. But if you just raise your hand, and one of these folks will get a microphone to you.
Genealogy seems so important in the Old Testament about important people, but why are the descendants of Moses never mentioned?
Michael? No, I will actually start that. It's real interesting. My family my mother's side of the family never admitted to their Jewish heritage. And, I have a great-grandfather who was named Solomon Weisskopf. And we think that they were some of the people involved in the Holocaust, and they never talked about that. So I have always had a great emotional attachment to the Hebrew Testament, and I have talked about some of Moses' descendants in the past, and I will in the future. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think for one of the things that I'd realized maybe why they're not as so prominently mentioned, you don't see all the begatting with Moses' descendants as you do with some of the others. When I look at least at the culture and the context and the people who put the Hebrew scriptures together, there wasn't a whole lot of question about Moses and his authenticity. So it wasn't as important to those people to prove that they had descended from that line that some of the other Hebrew patriarchs had descended from. You wanted to connect back to those people to say, I was from the line of David, or I was from the line of Abraham, which I guess technically in the Hebrew scriptures were most of us from the line of Abraham.
Exactly.
So, but Moses being the lawgiver, he kind of has that authority that comes with him. So.
I'm done begatting, by the way, just. No more begatting.
No more begatting for you? All right. Jan, anything you'd like to add?
I think you two answered it just fine.
Could you discuss the devil and unity?
Sure. Michael?
It keeps coming this way. So the way we in Unity understand the concept of the devil, two aspects of that. One, if you will, we see the devil or evil in the world as error thinking. Sin is looked at as an archery term. Actually, it's an old archery term of missing the mark. So the devil would be thought of as just not right thinking. And another piece to that, sir, as I may, is we certainly believe, absolutely, it's one presence and one power. So there is no other power out there, whether we call it the devil or Satan or whatever manifestation of bad or evil we wish to call it. There is no such power. That doesn't mean we don't have calamities in our lives and tragedies that we deal with, but they're not being caused by some external power out there in opposition to the one presence and one power.
So I've noticed in a lot of different Unity churches, they almost never acknowledge this, but I think we're ready. So my question is, will you speak, one of you at least, speak to the idea of the duality of the God, you know, outside, maybe in the clouds, we don't know, and then the God that we keep hearing and we keep knowing that we are. It seems that there's a lot of conflict within Unity about an external all-being knowing. So, thoughts?
There absolutely is quite a bit of conflict, and I've always thought it's fun. It depends on what minister you talk to. To me, I think if we say God is everywhere present, that includes in everything around us as well. The difference that I would see is it's not necessarily, it's only out there and not within me. And part of that, I think, is selfish. There have been times in my life when I want that God outside to pray to. And I want that being that's outside of me that can kind of come in and help me live my life. So that may just be my own selfish desire to have a God that's there to interact with, that's not just internal. But I don't know, what are the rest of the other folks up here think?
I believe that as we get more and more in touch with and own our own divine identity as a spiritual being, that we pray from that space and at the same time know that all of creation, all of us everywhere, all is God. God is love, and it's all God.
I think the trouble spot that we run into is when we start trying to say, this is God, this isn't God, that's not God. If God is everywhere, that includes around us, within us, all-encompassing. And the other problem spot we run into is I don't believe that we fully have the language that's capable to accurately describe what God is. The second we said this is what God is, we're already off because we've limited the truth of what that is. So. All right.
Could someone please just discuss the difference between tithing and charitable donations?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Tithing is to a place where you're receiving your spiritual goods. So if you're receiving your spiritual good from a class, from a person, from an organization like Unity Church of Overland Park, then you send your tithe to that to further God's work. And a charitable donation is a donation outside of that, where you just want to really support the community, support a charity of some kind. Now, we are re-examining all of that. And, the board has taken a huge, huge step to see that Community Link, for example, and what's the one in Haiti?
Heart to Heart.
Heart to Heart are doing just incredible work, and our people that are involved with those are getting some spiritual growth and unfoldment. So, that's why the board has decided to go ahead and give a portion of their tithe to those organizations. So we're seeing them sort of being blended together now. But in the strictest definition of the word, a tithe is to a place where you're receiving your spiritual good.
And what I would add to that is, for me, a tithe is to a place that reminds me of the presence of God in the world. And so that's where an organization like Community Link or Heart to Heart, whereas some might say, well, no, you don't, they're charities and you don't give a tithe to charity. To me, the work that they're doing and the sort of selfless giving that they're doing for our community reminds me that the presence of God is in the world and that it is active. And so I would give in that sense as well.
For Brandon. My name is Dorothy.
In the balcony.
A balcony.
My name is Dorothy, and I've been coming to Unity Church for worship for over 20 years now. And I would like to have you clarify what do we do with our hands? When do we hold them open? When are they closed? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I hope I'm not the only one who's confused on this. Thank you very much.
Michael? No.
Yeah. I don't
Mind to
know.
wave with, that's what
Yeah.
it's kind of.
And I don't know that I have an actual concrete answer as to this is when you would hold them open, this is when you would close. It's about whatever is comfortable for you. You know, traditionally, people will hold their hands out like this if we're blessing someone, if we're directing a prayer energy out from us. A lot of times I'll hold my hands like this because it feels like they're open and I'm receptive to the energy of God that's moving through me. You know, I try to not do that because it closes me off, I feel like. But there's really not any set sort of, if you're doing this, hold your hands this way or that way. The main thing I would say is if you're directing that prayer energy out to someone else, like if I wanted to bless Randy right now, I might hold my hands out like that and so he'll hold his hands up to receive. But it's really kind of up to what you feel comfortable doing. To me, that's one of the strengths of unity is that you kind of get to hear those things that we do as tradition, but then you get to make your choice of if this is something that holds power for me and that works for me in my life. And you won't be shunned or run out of the building for doing something different.
I know that I am often real sensitive to energies, and so I will feel my hands moving. There's times that, that like in meditation, I know that sometimes it's down receiving and other times it's out more in a sending out fashion. And I think it's more whatever it is that's moving within you, and that there's not, as you said, there's not really a right or a wrong, but just feel into what it is that's moving in each of you.
This question is for Brandon, and my question is, where do you see this church being July 4th, 2016? And please don't answer 103rd and Antioch.
I would think we'll still be in this physical location as well. But I do see us growing quite a bit in the next year. There are some things coming down the line that we're getting ready to start here that are really beneficial in growing a community and strengthening the movement of the community. Not just in the amount of fun that we're going to have. I mean, playing bubble soccer with Unity Temple on the Plaza is going to be a whole lot of fun. But we're also going to do some things to connect us deeper into spirit, and to really get our small groups programs up and running. That'll start with Fall Faith. And all of the looking around that I've done, especially at the traditional Christian ministries, the Saddleback Church and Rick Warren and what they've done, they're all built around small groups that are specifically built for spiritual development. And so we'll start that with Fall Faith and keep moving from there out with those spiritually development-based small groups. And the nice thing about those is they become a really non-threatening way to bring other people in. To say, well, come to Sunday service. This is intimidating, especially if you're not been here before, if you don't know the language, and it's harder to get people to come into the door for a Sunday service. But hey, come to my small group. We're going to talk about prosperity this week. And so our traditional Christian friends have found wonderful success in growing their movements through that, and I think we'll see that here.
I wanted to address the issue of tithing also. I think you guys kind of missed the boat when the lady asked about it. I think we all need to hear what tithing is. And this church is dependent on income. I mean, we like to think maybe it's all spiritual, but we do need some help from each and every member. And tithing, to me, is 10%, but I'd like to hear your discussion of 10% of what?
You want to go ahead?
Sure. I like how we all look at each other. Who's going to start?
Go for it.
Yeah, The actual definition of tithing is 10%, off the top before the taxes come out. So 10% of the gross income that comes in. 10% of everything, not just your paycheck, but you get a check in the mail unexpectedly, and you take 10% off the top of that and give to where you're spiritually fed. Yes, we can absolutely use more income here at Unity Church of Overland Park, and if tithing's a great way to do that. Where I'm going to be reluctant is to tell each and every one of you that you're spiritually fed here. I hope you are. I hope that's why you're coming back here, is because you're being spiritually fed. But that's also a very personal decision that you have to make. Was I fed in that way spiritually? That's a decision the board makes every month. We sit down and we discuss, where are we going to tithe this month? And then we vote on it. And it's based off of where you're spiritually fed, and it's 10% of our total income. 10% is a great place to try to get towards. It's also a very scary place if you're not a regular tither, to think, okay, where's that 10% going to go, and how am I not going to have enough? And I think I even heard Edwin Gaines say this, 10% is the ideal, but whatever it takes to start working towards that is the best way to move into tithing. Because it is a spiritual practice that makes a huge difference in your life. I did talk to one of the professors out at Unity Institute that said a long time ago, she was originally very tied to, I will give 10%, and it will be exactly 10%. And then she just decided, I'm just going to give. I'll just get, and she said, interestingly enough, when I go back and balance my checkbook, it's 10%. But the ideal for me is to get you into that mode of giving. 10% is the bar to look at. That's what a true tithe is, but it's about giving.
It's about giving, and I believe, too, that it's about the energy that we give with, that we give from a place of joy and gratitude. Joy and gratitude for that which we have received, and we are just sending it out forth now. I know that I went through a time when I was learning more about tithing and really moving into that practice myself. And it was at a time also of a financial challenge. And so I really wanted to invite myself to explore this more. And so what I did was, I didn't have regular paychecks at that point in time. I was getting money at different times, different places. And so I just took 10% of everything, and I would often just give it in cash, whatever, just so I could get into that practice of just giving. And I really saw for myself too that as I did this, there was just this sense of joy, and wow, here's another one I get to give. And it was just, it's really important that we send forth our gifts, our tithes, with a sense of love and of gratitude.
I would just echo Brandon and Jan in that tithing isn't a money practice. It's a spiritual practice. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it's all about. And so it's a tool we can use as a spiritual practice to help us participate in the flow of life, in the flow of energy, in the flow of growth. And the more that we do that, then that moves us to a greater place of thanksgiving, and then a greater place of giving, and then a greater place of receiving. It's participating in that circular flow, and it's a practice to do that. And so the practice isn't you have to give 10%. It's just using the spiritual tool of tithing as a practice.
I'd like to see what your response would be to a conservative Christian friend that said that gay marriage was ungodly.
Piffle.
And, it's funny because I have read all of those articles about what the biblical definition of marriage is and all that, and so I would ask them, which one? Because there are so many different biblical definitions of marriage, which one are we going to use? Are we going to use the one that says that a woman that was a victim of rape now has to marry her rapist, because that's in there? Are we going to use the one that says that if I'm married and something happens to me, that now my brother has to marry my wife, because that's in there too? Are we going to use the one that says that shellfish is no longer allowed to be eaten? Because so when we're looking at those sorts of biblical standards, what we're really looking at is the moral and legal code of 6th century Hebrew society. And then if we look at what Jesus came and taught, Jesus said that he had come to teach us so that we could love each other more abundantly. Jesus didn't really give us a lot of teachings on those moral codes. He talked about love and that was our greatest mission. So I don't buy that there's this biblical standard. I know the legal code is in there, but there's all sorts of other stuff that it says we're not legally allowed to do. And including selling our children into slavery and that sort of stuff. That we've progressed past that as a culture.
You can ask the question, I wouldn't ask it necessarily directly back, but there is the question of, well, non-Christians can marry, and atheists can marry, so how is it a biblical standard if they can marry? And marriage is actually a civil ceremony. It doesn't really have to have, although of course we are a part of that, but it doesn't have to have a spiritual side to it. It's actually a civil ceremony that is part of the state or part of the government.
Hi, I have a question. As you all know, better than me, Unity Worldwide Ministries is going through some major organizational changes right now. And the School of Christianity, as I understand it, is merging with Unity Worldwide Ministries. And I know you all just returned from the annual convention. I guess I'm just wondering, I know there's a lot of questions right now as to what this means, what the future of the denomination is going forward, and in particular the ministerial candidate program. I wonder if you could share any thoughts or insights on that.
Sure. What do you have any?
Yeah, what people don't, what's happening is Unity at Unity Village is turning over the ministerial program to Unity Worldwide Ministries. And there's been a lot of concern about that. And I'll just share with you, Unity Worldwide Ministries used to have the ministerial education program. And Unity School took it over. So it's sort of a back and forth flow. I'm excited about where Unity is going to go personally. And personally, Unity Church of Overland Park, I think the stance that we're taking here, that Brandon's leading us on, and being unapologetically unity in taking our truth and living our truth, I think is going to do nothing but grow and expand, not only here at Unity Church of Overland Park, in the community, in this area, and out into the world in which we live. So I'm very optimistic about the future of Unity. Mm-hmm. And it just had to go through this time of transition. Unity Church of Overland Park has been through a time of transition. Transitions are both over. Now let's move forward. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Unity Worldwide Ministries has committed to taking on the educational programs. That's about all we know for sure at this point, because they're still in the exploration and the finding out phase. At this point, they're considering some sort of a hybrid program where students would go online to take their Bible history classes or do interactive web seminars for Bible history or theology, history of Christianity, and then go out to Unity Village for the classes that you can't do online, like learning how to speak in front of a congregation on a Sunday morning, or how to counsel people one-on-one. That's the sort of thing you can only do in person. I think ultimately it's a great move for Unity. I think they'll move to the next perfect phase of their ministerial education. And it was interesting at the convention because it didn't matter which minister you talked to, whatever program they went through was the right and the only way to do it. Each one of us would have our thoughts on what should and shouldn't be a part of the program, but ministerial education will continue in this area in some form or another. I think maybe we have time for one, maybe two more, because I see Kay back there. So we'll do two more and then move on.
Touching on the transition that we've gone through the last couple of years, Our attendance numbers are down, and is there any sort of outreach that we're doing now that things have stabilized to reach out to the former members and I think introduce Brandon and reintroduce the church so that we can invite them back into the fold?
There's not, at the moment, we haven't formalized any sort of plans for that. But I think it's something we definitely should do in some way, shape, or form, whether it's letters that go out, mailers that go out, some way to let people know that our vision here has changed and that the energy here has shifted from the way it was, that we're in a new era. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely ways to consider that.
I think you should just consider like coffees with each of them. Like literally like go out and see them in their settings and say, hey, I'm Brandon, I'm pretty awesome, we're gonna do some awesome stuff. Because I think that one-on-one interaction will really sink in with people. Letters, I don't know if that'll do it, you know?
Yeah, I think as easy as we can make to connect with them. So yeah, absolutely. All right, and then I think Kay had a question.
My question is kind of on the same topic, actually, and that has to do with attendance and participation. And I know in churches that I have attended in the past, in the more traditional Christian denominations, one of the things, I've never quite understood it, but it worked every time. One of the things that they seemed to do, especially when attendance was down, was start some sort of a capital improvements program. Whether it was a replace the roof or annex a building or some sort of major construction effort. And again, I don't quite understand it, but it always seemed to yield additional attendance. And I never have quite understood, but I was wondering if there's anything like that on the horizon to kind of, since it apparently is a proven approach, anything like that on the horizon for Unity Church of Overland Park?
You know, I think it might be time for us to re-examine that. We did a readiness assessment a few years ago. We were looking at having a capital campaign to pay off the mortgage. And we did surveys, we had one-on-one conversations, we brought in church development, a local group that specializes in this kind of thing. And they said this congregation didn't want it yet. But this has been, what, maybe 6-7 years ago? Mm-hmm. And it might be time for us to reopen that and see what you as a congregation want to do. I'd love to get this mortgage paid off. You know, we spend almost $12,000 a month for our mortgage payment. And I think we owe right now about $1.5 million, maybe a little bit more than $1.5 million, which is not a lot of money. And so, you know, my time is short, but I would sure like to see this done here.
Yeah, I do think it's time to kind of reevaluate that and the feasibility of doing a campaign like that, and if it's something that we are ready for. And, you know, I think last year and the year before that, we wanted to get our minister here and get that settled and identified, and now that we're here and we're ready to move forward, I think that's definitely something for us to consider and for us as a board to talk about if it's time to start something like that.
Do we have time for one more? She's had her hand up for a while.
Oh, sure.
I'm new here. This is the first time I've been here. But I was just wondering what your feelings are about the afterlife and where your soul goes afterwards, because I feel like I'm really drawn to that.
I feel like I've started all of them.
Okay. First of all, welcome. And I believe that we are evolving souls, and that we in Unity believe that heaven and hell are right here, that we create our own heaven and hell right here as we live, and that we are evolving souls, and that we do live eternally. And so that for me is, you know, it's not a heaven off somewhere, but rather that is right here, that we are living heaven on earth, and that we are just evolving souls.
Yeah,
Yes, and in this heaven on earth that we live here, after this life, I ascribe and listen to Jesus' words that in my Father's house there are many mansions. So there is another place, another life, and another life. So it is life everlasting. But our work is to bring heaven here.
I don't know. I'll let you know. I do know the soul is eternal, though. I know the soul continues and it's ongoing. And, I agree with what's been said. I think truly it's an upward progressive movement of the soul. But stay tuned. I'll get back to you.
You better not do that anytime soon.
No.
Yeah, I would agree that the soul in some way, shape, or form continues on in its experience. Beyond that, I can't say. I don't know what that experience looks like, what that experience is. But I would say the soul does continue on. So I know there may be a few other questions, and I'll tell you what. I at least will commit to being available in the receiving lines and in the lobby to answer any of those. But I also know from my experience as a youth and family ministry director what happens to the children when it gets close to the time for them to come in. So I'm going to bring a close to our question and answer time, but thank you for your questions and your comments, and I think we're going to go sit down while we still can and leave you up here, Bob.
Great.
So, yeah.